This is my garage. Usually I'm using this space to put together my projects, but today it is the project. I've noticed that the floor is a giant blank canvas, so I'm going to turn it into something a little more fun by painting a design directly onto the concrete. But since I park my car in here sometimes, I've got a little bit of cleaning to do before I can get to the fun part. To start it off, I'm removing any and all garage stuff from the floor, and then sweeping and blowing out the rest of the debris. Like with any paint project, preparing the surface is key. So I definitely need to do that here since I have my oil stain and my tire marks. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and clean the entire slab to really get it nice and clean for my paint. So to do that, I'm going to use a concrete cleaner, which this particular one requires water mixed in a pump-up sprayer. And for protection, I have chemical-resistant gloves, respirator, eye protection. I'm going to scrub it with my scrub brush and then rinse it with the garden hose. And if you have any tricky spots that are flaking up, a putty knife comes in handy for that. This oil stain is the biggest problem area, and it'll take a little bit of work. I'm pouring the concrete cleaner directly onto it at full strength and allowing it to really sink into the stain. This is a good time to scrape any built-up gunk off of the concrete, like paint and this thing. Following the concrete cleaner instructions, dilute it with the right amount of water and then use your pump-up sprayer to coat the entire floor. After the cleaner has had time to really penetrate the concrete, thoroughly scrub any problem areas like the oil spill and tire tracks. Remove any chemicals by rinsing off the entire floor. Then allow the concrete to dry overnight. Once the floor is free of all moisture, spray the entire surface with a concrete sealer and then allow that to dry. The sealer will prevent future stains, which is an important step and something I wish I would have done several years ago. Well, it's only been 5 years since my garage was this clean, and hopefully once I get my rug painted down on the floor, it'll inspire me to keep it just as clean. To do that, I have my design drawn out on my paper. So the tricky part is getting it from the paper and putting it on the floor with painter's tape. So the first thing I'll need is painter's tape, a tape measure, and a permanent marker. My design calls for a border that starts 36 inches from the front and back of the garage and 18 inches from either side. So I'm marking each corner and then connecting those marks with painter's tape. This creates the rug's outside border. Since this concrete is a rough surface, paint will seep under the painter's tape, but we can minimize the seepage by firmly pressing the tape down, leaving no loose tape or bubbles. Now I'm really starting to get a feel for how it's going to look. Now I just have to do the inside border of the rug. All the black lines represent where the tape's going, so I still have a little ways to go. Now I'm applying tape just inside the outer frame, which once painted will give me a 2-inch border. Since my design isn't drawn to scale, I'm having to do a little measuring and figuring now that I'm in the middle of laying the tape on the garage floor. So I'm working on these two sections right here. And I have to keep in mind the width of my painter's tape because that'll eat up part of my design, so make sure you consider that when you're picking up your materials. I want a full 20 inches for this section, so I'm going to put my tape on this side of the line, and this will still be plenty big. They say diamonds are a girl's best friend. In the case of this rug, I think that's certainly true. From here on, it's all about following the pattern and connecting the lines. You can be as creative as you want, and pattern ideas are literally endless. My rug has lots of details and is pretty large, so I used about 300 feet of painter's tape, which is around 3 rolls. So depending on your design, you can get away with a lot less than that. Just don't forget to measure it out before buying tape, so you'll have a good idea of how much is needed and you won't run out in the middle of your project. For an additional accent, I'm adding a couple smaller diamonds in the center. I love the way the design turned out. Now I can get to the fun part of spreading the paint. And the only rule here is to stay inside the lines, and I think I can manage that. To do that, I'm going to need some garage floor paint, a paint roller, a paint tray, and my respirator. I chose this mint green color to really brighten up the garage. I'm already loving it. This part couldn't be any easier. You don't have to worry about drips or runs because unlike most paint jobs, the paint is supposed to fall on the floor. Just make sure you fully cover everything within the border and allow it to dry to the touch before removing any tape. This is the part I'm most nervous but also most excited for, is peeling back the tape to hopefully have clean, straight lines. Pulling up tape this way is starting to get kind of addicting. I love when a project turns out better than expected, and this rug is Exhibit A. Now, the paint I use requires 7 days dry time before I can drive my car in it, so I'm thinking that gives my husband plenty of time to get my car detailed before I park it back in the garage. I've got so many projects to share with you, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss my next episode.